Rivals of Aether 2 by Aether Studios is an enigma of a fighting game. I may not pay much attention to traditional fighting games. Sorry, I'm a dirty Smash player, but even I know that commonly in competitive scenes, it's extremely likely for skills to transfer between one game to another. Sure, there's exceptions. The people who've been playing Street Fighter for 30 years are probably most comfortable playing not Persona 4 Arena Ultimax. But if we look at a game like Guilty Gear Strive or Dragon Ball FighterZ or Street Fighter 6, the amount of players who have been at a high point in multiple games is astounding. Platform fighters, on the other hand, feel more strict than that. It's not often that you see people play multiple platform fighters at a high level. It's mostly split between melee players, ultimate players, or whatever the most recent Smash game is players, and, well, that other unofficial Smash game that we'll get to later. This is even true for other entries in the genre outside of Smash Bros. Notably, the original Rivals of Aether cultivated its very own niche scene. While CakeAssault, the game's perennial #1 player, was a ranked melee player in his own region, he wasn't exactly top player caliber in that game. Not to mention, I'd never heard of many of the other high-level Rivals 1 players having extended time in melee. The differences between platform fighters tend to drive people hard into their niche. It goes like this. Do you like learning tech skill for hours in a lab? Go play melee. If your hands aren't quite built for that kind of torment, you play ultimate, and if melee's roster isn't quite your thing, you go elsewhere. Sure, there's been bits and pieces of overlap, most notably Mewtwo King being a menace in both Melee, Smash 4, and probably still being searched for because of war crimes he committed in Smash Bros. Brawl. There was CakeAssault being a high-level Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl 2 player for the week or so that game was new, and near the beginning of Ultimate's life, there were many Melee players doing their best Ultimate player impressions for a handful of tournaments. But when we talk about players who stuck to multiple Smash games, yeah, I've got nothing other than Mewtwo King over there. This is why I call Rivals of Aether 2 an enigma. This game has brought together top talent from across the platform fighter community at large. From its predecessor Rivals of Aether 1, Smash Ultimate and Melee alike, and even platform fighters that were either forgotten to time, or I'm like 80% convinced don't fucking exist. No other tournament puts this all together like the one and only legendary competitive fighting game tournament, EVO 2025, for Rivals 2. If you're at all involved in competitive gaming, whether it be watching an Awesome Sauce video, going to a local, or even just hearing about it in passing, you've most likely heard of EVO. It is the premier fighting game tournament, from your Street Fighters to your Marvel vs. Capcoms, Mortal Kombat, Guilty Gear, all of them share a home under EVO as their biggest event. Notice how I didn't mention any plat fighters. This isn't to say Smash has never been to EVO, quite the contrary. 4 out of the 5 Smash games have been there, but the relationship between the two has always been iffy. Melee got to go to EVO a few times, first through crowdfunding that Nintendo tried to shut down, but eventually it became something of a mainstay, until Nintendo pulled the plug on it. Super Smash Bros. Brawl got to go to EVO its first year of release, but it had almost every stage in the game legal, with items, and a child who just so happened to be on vacation won it. Smash 4 actually got by pretty unfazed at EVO multiple times. It was just Smash 4, so that in itself is a bad time. And EVO outside of Japan has only hosted Smash Ultimate once, and while it was an amazing tournament as a spectator's perspective, holding many of the game's most iconic players, sets, and tournament runs, it too got the plug pulled by Nintendo. Plat fighters at EVO clearly have an audience, but with Nintendo wanting to focus on its casual fun side of Smash, it seems like we're destined to stay on the sidelines. Hosting our own events, cast aside from the space many others were basking in the light of. It wouldn't be until 2025 in which a game would unite the entire genre's community under EVO yet again. EVO of Rivals of Aether 2 is the topic for today, more specifically, the top 8 competitors of the game's bracket. This top cut contained players from 5 different iterations of platform fighters, all gunning to take the top spot in what is most likely the ultimate platform fighter event ever. And for our first group we're going over, the old guard if you will, the top players hailing from the original Rivals of Aether. With a solid 3rd place at EVO, we've got CakeAssault, with his own trusty Forest Burn. CakeAssault is and will always be the GOAT of Rivals of Aether 1. Through the game's multiple years of rankings, CakeAssault always secured himself a top 5 placement from the start, reaching the #1 spot 5 whole times within the game's life, with an insane output when it came to tournament winnings. And even an acknowledgement from the devs of his skill. A player with talent so great the devs had to address an outcry for nerfs with nothing but skill issue. I think for many fans, when Rivals of Aether 2 came out, it was kinda scary. Will the top players from Rivals 1 be able to adapt? I mean, there's wholly new mechanics to the series. Keep in mind, Rivals 1 didn't have shields or ledges, and those massively changed how the game is played. Luckily for CakeAssault's many fans, it would seem like this transition would be smoother than expected, with a new character too. That's right, when Rivals 2 was releasing, CakeAssault would stick to none other than the newcomer Fleet as his dedicated main in the meantime, which would yet again cause an outcry for the character to be nerfed. Where have I seen that before? After a disappointing 17th at Genesis X, CakeAssault would go on an immaculate run with the Animal Archer, taking first place at Collision, Smash Camp, Supernova 2024, Riptide 2024, Heatwave 7, Don't Park on the Grass, and LACS Rivals with this character. However, it was clear that in some way this Fleet was a stopgap, and as the outcries were heard and the Floating Fox fell down the tier list, Cake's main would return to him the very same patch. And while we still see the Fleet from time to time, the Master of Deception Forsburn would be CakeAssault's go-to character yet again. While he's been seen to falter more than Rivals 1, it's clear that CakeAssault has taken to the new engine and mechanics phenomenally alongside his peers. Just in this top 8, there were 2 other Rivals 1 competitors, in Fullstream, the game's old number 1 player before CakeAssault, and Kusi was Taken, a top player in his own right for both Rivals of Aether games. It's clear now that while the sequel may be very different in a lot of ways, Rivals is Rivals. It's struck an insane balance of easy to learn and hard to master. And when you've already mastered its prequel, it's gonna be a fairly easy time swapping over. Now, if we look at our 5th place finishers, we have a bit of a dynamic. One player from a game I know far, far too well, and one game, I'm only a little sorry to say this, I have no interest in learning about. Let's start with my home turf first. Spargo. In Smash Ultimate, Spargo is known as a consistent top-level threat, having finally cinched that top 1 rank in the second half of 2024's Lumi Rank season. This isn't even to get into his multiple top 5 ranked placements either, as he's only fallen out of the top 5 rankings once since 2022. Spargo's been known to wield swords. In Ultimate, it's his trusty Cloud and Pyromithra that got him to this top placement, alongside other secondaries like Corrin and Roy, and pocket picks in pools like Lucina and Byleth. Clearly, if the character has a sword, Spargo takes to them, and thus the pick for this competitor in Rivals 2 is none other than the sword-wielding cat, Clarin. Spargo's first major event in Rivals 2 was shocking, to say the least. While his first online event of the Rivals of Aether 2 coin box would end in a comfortable 25th place, his run at his first offline event would put him on the map in this game. Spargo would make a tear through the Rivals of Aether 2 bracket at Luminosity Makes Big Moves 2025, taking down the likes of Prince of Delaware's Rano, Void's Forsborn, and the combination of Stango and Switch's Zetterburns, and even the mirror match against top Clarin player Boyko to reach 2nd place at the event, and even taking the event's first seed and winner, CakeAssault, to a Game 5 in what was an insane run. Watching this live was mind-breaking. Never before in a platform fighter had I seen someone compete in 2 games at the same tournament to such a level. For Christ's sake, Spargo won Ultimate later that day. If he hadn't been taken out of Winterside Pools by Rano player Lucius, there's a genuine chance Spargo could have been walking home from this tournament with 2 first-place trophies. Since then, he's consistently made top cut at any Rivals 2 event he goes to. Sure, while he doesn't travel expressly for Rivals 2 much, placements like 4th at Battle of BC, 2nd at Gommel Forever, and 2nd at Supernova 2025 have taught players not to underestimate him in this environment. Ultimate is one of the farthest plat fighters away from Rivals of Aether 2 that we'll be covering in this video. It often gets a bad rap for its players seemingly mashing aggressive options, and sometimes they work, alongside a general lack of tech skill for movement or any means in the game. But clearly it isn't that far away. Any smaller scale events Spargo's entered, tournaments where Rivals 2 is more of a side event than a main bracket, he's clearly and concisely dominated. And while he hasn't gotten to that major winning point in this game, he clearly will in time. His adaptation to this new meta is insane, and his only real problem match seems to be the newly released Olympia, which I'm sure will be figured out in time. Spargo was the only Smash Ultimate player to travel to EVO for this game this year, and while Void, Beastly, and Mars have all proved that Ultimate players can hang in this environment, Spargo's the one proving they have a chance to do better, and instead of just hanging in the environment, dominating it. Okay, look, I've been dreading making this next part of the video. Next up on the docket, representing Brawlhalla, is Sandstorm, the number 1 player from this free-to-play, floaty as hell, hard to understand. Look, I don't have graphics to show you. Brawlhalla isn't on Smasher's app, and most of all, I have a negative attachment to this game. I could sit here bullshitting you for hours about how deep and complex the game is, but I never want to be the type to talk shop about something I'm clearly out of my depths in. Still, this is no slight to Sandstorm. To my knowledge, he's a dominant first place figure for the game, and being that consistent in any game is hard. Even if it is complete dog shit. Sandstorm would begin his Rivals of Aether 2 journey at Platfight Gaming Championships, a Rivals 2 major in which he'd attain a solid and respectable 33rd with his at the time main fleet. However, once we roll over to 2025, we'd see the release of the Bruiser Mouse Olympia, and at CEO of 2025, we'd see what Sandstorm was made of in this game, with him taking out 4th seed Zabi's Crag and being just one game shy of making top 8 at this event, getting 9th losing to top Maple main Elkies. Following that was yet another 9th place finish at Gommel Forever, and then boom, a top 6 finish at EVO of all events, Rivals 2's most prestigious event so far. It's strange, it feels like Sandstorm is the player with the least amount of data on him. If anything, he's the hardest to predict his trajectory. He's a walking X-Factor. After EVO, he went on to get 5th at Supernova 2025, as well as a 7th place at Collision 2025. 2 more big events to add to the list. Whether this is a sign of new top talent, or a flash in the pan in a still constantly developing meta, Sandstorm has made his name known through the Rivals 2 scene. A splash like top 8ing 2 of the game's biggest tournaments to date cannot be undervalued. And that's not to even mention he's the only top-level player competing on a keyboard. That's just cool. In many discussions on competitive plat fighters, the topic is always who's next to win a major. Oftentimes, entries in this genre can be so widely locked down by a set group of players, it's typically easy to predict. However, if there's one thing Sandstorm has shown, it's his ability to level up insanely quickly to the next level of competition. And if you're looking for what player may be the next to win a major, this bet is a left field pick that definitely has potential. Though, if we're talking about major winners, let's talk about the member of this top 8 to most recently win one. Stango, representing Project Plus. When Rivals 2 was releasing, it was clear to me and many others that a certain underlooked Smash scene was taking to it a lot more than anyone. Stango, Run Gunshoe, Switch, and many other top Rivals 2 players have spent lots of their life playing this old Brawl mod. Stango himself is one of Project Plus's most notable competitors, being known as one of the best Zero Suit Samus players in the game alongside Fox, Falco, Marth, Donkey Kong, Wolf. Really, Project Plus is a game that lets you do it all, I guess. The Project Plus scene nearly instantly migrated over to Rivals 2 as it was coming out, Stango's first event being Creed 3, making a top 4 placement and defeating the best Wolf in Project Plus and one of the best Zetabrins in Rivals 2, Switch. Stango started his life in this new platform fighter on fire with a trusty Zetabrn for most of the game's beginning. He'd take places like 2nd at Supernova 2024, 2nd at Platfight, 3rd at Genesis X2, and 5th at CEO. While his online events show inconsistency, it's clear when showing up to an in-person event, Stango is one of the best there is. Through a combination of his Zetabrn and Crag, he made a name for himself in the early life of Rivals 2. It wouldn't be until EVA when we'd see him pilot Olympia, Zetabrn, and Crag all together to his 2nd place run at the event. Getting upset in bracket early by Fleet Main Mystery Soul, a 7-set losers run would lock in 2nd place for the Tri-Main, taking out multiple players we've talked about here today. It seems like Zetabrn was sort of a space filler while Olympia was in the waiting room. Don't get me wrong at all, his Zetabrn is good and still has made appearances since Olympia's release in addition to his roster, but it would be his Olympia which would win him his first ever major tournament at Supernova 2025 after EVO over the likes of ZB, BBAS, CakeAssault, and Spargo in grand finals. But clearly winning one major wasn't enough for him. He'd also win Collision 2025 back-to-back after Supernova, adding the likes of Run Gunshoe, Project Plus's most notable Marth main, to his list of wins, alongside winning grand finals of Collision 2025 with Loxodon. Technically speaking, Loxodon has one more majors than Rado. I don't make the rules. Stango seems to have separated himself from the crowd when it comes to his fellow Project M competitors, having taken out each and every one of them when it comes to this game. But that's not to put down the others as well. I think the most exciting part of this crossover is seeing these unsung platform fighter giants finally have a stage to their own. Project M is a mod, and as such will probably never get a stage as big as this, but the players are clearly some of the most talented the series has to offer, and as someone who's followed that game for years, even having it be my introduction to competitive Smash, it's been amazing to see these players get their time in the spotlight. But of course, we've yet to go over the winner of Rivals 2 at EVO. The player who's probably the biggest wildcard in Rivals 2 as a whole. I mentioned near the start of this video that platform fighters don't see a lot of overlap, and Melee players specifically love Melee to the point where they'd never consider playing another game competitively over it, which makes our EVO winner that much more surprising. Everybody give it up for Plup. Plup would start out in Melee as the best Samus player. Then, once it was clear his results were being held back by the Bounty Hunter, Plup would make his way up the tier list to co-maining Sheik and Fox. His attendance since reaching the heights of his career have been sparse. He's clearly talented, but when he shows up, you can't be sure what type of player you're going to be watching. He can seem sort of aloof. He'll show up to a giant event like Supernova just to bring back his Samus pick for funsies and spend time on stream playing things other than his career. A real shock. When it comes to Rivals 2, Plup has entered 3 total offline events for us to analyze. That's less than Sandstorm. 2 of them being some of the biggest events in the game. And both of them, he dominated with first place finishes. Starting at LECS, a primarily Rivals event containing side brackets for Melee and Ultimate, Plup would get a humbling 2-2 with his Maple, placing 7th out of 16 players, which wasn't exactly bad, defeating the Rano twins of Mars and Luck at the event. 3 months later, no update to his commitment to the game, and a whopping 1 extra Wi-Fi event between tournaments, and Plup would go on to make a Cinderella run at Genesis X2. Elkies, Ion, Kusi, and CakeAssault twice would win Plup his 2nd ever Genesis title, and his 1st ever for Rivals of Aether 2 at the premier event for the game. Seeing this made me feel, complicated. Don't get me wrong, I'm a Plup fan. He's one of the most interesting players to follow, and whenever he shows up to an event, you want him to make it count. Rather, my contempt at this win was due to his primary character, Maple. I've had less than positive things to say about the Raccoon. A fast, slippery, rushdown character with trapper aspects and an affinity for having moves that decimate crouch cancel makes me want to treat my controller like a contestant on Hole in the Wall, the only game show where drywall meets anger. I definitely let my anger for the character cloud my view on the win. It's an insane sentence to say this player won the biggest event for the game that he doesn't mainly play. And then 6 months later, he'd do it again, this time adding in another Olympia to the ranks alongside his trusty Maple and secondary Orcane. To say this EVO run was dominant is the understatement of the century. Plup defeated Mystery Soul, Spargo, CakeAssault all in 3-0s. He did not drop a single game at this tournament until Grand Finals against Stango in a heated counterpick war. Plup and BBats are both Melee players that top-aided this event, and a testament to how universal Rivals 2 is. It's a platform fighter that has brought together every nook and cranny under one roof. Even the scenes that people thought wouldn't budge for any reason have migrated to this landscape. It's impossible to predict what Plup will do next. EVO 2025 was his latest tournament. The only thing you can predict is that he'll win his next event. It's what all of the evidence points to. But this video isn't about singular player achievements. This isn't about winning records or matchups or rankings. It's about community and acceptance. Finally, the community, which has been so fragmented and cut off from each other based on which game you play, has been united by one game made by an indie studio, and at the biggest stage that could never before give platform fighters a real shot. Thank you for watching. Hey Dan,